It's Women's History Month.
Yes.
This conversation should not be controversial. And yes, someone's going to take it controversially, but that's okay.
Yes, I know. And so, one of the things when we think about with Women's History Month is, sort of honoring some of those brave women who had courage and really advocated, because a lot of things have not been easy over time for women in gaining various rights and so forth. And we say this as history, and yet I think where the controversy comes in is we're living it now, right? The things that are happening now in today's time, today's world, including our own country, this is history making. And so how we go about it is going to make a difference in women's lives moving forward. And so, this is one of those that you and I sort of debated. How can we do this in a way? Because we certainly don't want this to be about politics or parties, because we're really focused on the mental health aspect and relationships aspect. And so that's what we're going to delve into today. And hopefully we hit those different points, but really talking about women's voices. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And how does it help? And when we're not hearing women's voices, what does that mean? So I'm interested in like your thoughts about diving into this episode and this discussion together.
I think it's an important topic. I think no matter how carefully we discuss this topic, there are going to be people who disagree. That's okay.
That's okay.
Have your opinions, but it's a conversation, guys.
It's a conversation. And I think that's what this is all about is
it's a conversation
voice
that should be had.
And people can disagree on the issues. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what we want to do is just bring some things up and talk about how women's voice in these in every aspect of the issues that impact our daily life, these matter. And women's voice is important. No matter what that voice is, all voices of women are important to inform what's happening.
I think we should also mention that all voices in general are important.
Yes.
But it's Women's History Month, and this video is about women's voices, so.
And we say this, and I absolutely believe all voices, every voice is important. And I think one of the challenges is when we talk about this is because, and again, this is going to sound really, men have typically had voice, at least in much of history, throughout history, maybe not all cultures or all times, but certainly as a mom of young men, I'm very cognizant of this. And even as I've raised the three of you, I've had to really challenge myself in how I view things and what I'm saying. And is it specific to a gender? Was I letting some behaviors go because it was my son or my daughter, like, am I too hard on one, too? Like, these are things that it's happening all around us. And I think if we don't acknowledge that it is, if we don't think that we have any thoughts related to that, then I would wonder at some of our level of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. And then again, maybe my brain just never shuts off and I just constantly think some of these different things.
I mean, that's very true.
That's very true. It's always, and that's me. I mean, I have built a practice where reflection is involved in almost all aspects that I do in a way that I hope helps me become the person that I want to be without also like delving into the ruminating, overthinking that can sometimes come with that. And I feel like I've achieved a healthy balance, but maybe not. We'll see.
I don't know. There's a lot of big words, and so I zoned out.
You zoned out, of course.
Anyways.
And I think we're still new at this podcasting thing.
Yes.
And we're still trying to find our voice. Some of our episodes we're feeling like, oh, that was pretty good. That flowed pretty well. That felt pretty good. And then sometimes we're like, I don't know what came out of that. So again, we appreciate our listeners, feedback on this as we're still trying to figure this out. But this one, as I thought about it and as I sat with it, and I think maybe a couple of months ago, I would have shied away from this topic. But I also went back to, the mental vision board, because it's all in my head. It's still February. I got to get this down in writing. But one of the things that's part of my vision board for me as my becoming includes strength. That's one of my 3 main areas. And in strength, it's certainly mind with my mindfulness practice, my body with physical strength and wanting to age well. But then the other part is the spiritual. And when I really thought about the spiritual, certainly it's my own spiritual and faith journey. But really, as I have been teasing that one out, it is about strengthening my voice with my spirituality, right? Strengthening my voice in the sense of I tend to keep a lot of my things to myself, right? Like I do certain things, but I always feel like as a teacher and a helper and a healer, I hold lots of diverse views, different beliefs and worldviews, because they're all valid. How people see the world and their experiences. I should say all the ones that I've held are valid. And so sometimes I'm not in a situation where at least where I feel it's appropriate for me to own my own voice. Like, this is me, this is who I think, and this is what I believe. Except for maybe some basic, like, I believe we should all treat others like we want to be treated, like things like that. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling as I'm saying this.
I think so.
So, yeah. So, but as I was thinking about this episode in preparing, which is, how do I use my voice, right? We're talking about women's voices and how do we speak up? How do we listen? How do we validate other voices? And where are we at in that whole process? So that's what I was thinking of. Like, I feel like I'm really good at validating and believing other women's, and so my area of becoming is sort of leaning more into my own voice also with that. So thus, we're jumping into this episode.
Yes. Where are we starting?
Well, we can take it a few different ways. I think, you've been doing some assignments with case conceptualization. And to me, one of the best ways to conceptualize how an individual, right? Because as individuals, we don't function in a vacuum. There's this, what we call Bronfenbrenner's ecological perspective. See, and you stayed with me, like, because you know this backwards and forward.
I do know this. I could do this with my eyes closed, but yeah. So I figured we could maybe take it from that perspective and see where it goes. Okay.
Yes. And so do you want to explain?
So I can never pronounce his name.
Bronfenbrenner's ecological perspective.
That it's a little system and it has different tiers. Well, it's like a giant circle within circles. The first inner circle is like you yourself. And like the things like, I don't know.
You've got it right. Yeah.
Like you yourself, your family, that sort of thing. And then the next tier is like the things like your neighbors, your friends, that sort of thing. Outside of that, it's like school, law enforcement, that sort of things that it impacts you. All these things are things that impact you. And then outside of that, the very last little ring is like religion, beliefs, that sort of thing. That's a very brief overview and a not very structured overview. But
yeah. So let's take it as the individual themselves, right? And especially as we think about women's voices, and this is applicable to males too, and non-binary, in the sense of how are we hearing other people, whether and listening non-judgmentally and so forth. So if we look at the individual, and of course all of this can actually apply to all voices. But if we look at the individual, what are their personal characteristics, right? Because how someone is, with their abilities, personality, strengths, and so forth, that might be very different, right? So if we're talking about voice specifically, then some people may naturally feel more shy or introverted. Other people might be more extroverted and so forth. So there might be some characteristics that go into play. And we see this sometimes, like you can have several siblings, and we even see this with twins, right? So when you think about, we know that siblings, even though you can grow up in the same household with the same parents,
things differently.
You may experience different parenting, right? Because based on where you're at, the parents that your older sibling may have had may be very different than the parent that you had, because there's different stressors happening in the household, maybe different socioeconomic types of things. Even 2 years difference can play a big thing. Sometimes parents' own mental wellness and ability to function in the day-to-day world. So we know that siblings in and of themselves may have different experiences, and of course they have different perspectives. That being said, we've also seen where twins, there's a lot of similarities, but the twins should be, the same parenting similarities, styles, and so forth.
And how does this go back to women's voices?
I had a point here. So as an individual, right? So we know that individuals have different experiences. And so I think we always need to acknowledge that aspect. Then the next part of that system is, what were their experiences within their family system? Right? Along with Bronfenbrenner's ecological perspective, I also think in terms of John Bowlby's attachment theory and his internal working model. Oh, you know this one too.
I'm sure I do. I don't recognize the name though.
Attachment theory. Yes. You've heard
I know
it. Yeah.
attachment theories. I don't.
Yes.
The first name that you said, I didn't.
And so we know how an individual experiences their family matters, right? How do they see themselves? But then how do they see others? Do they think that other people will meet their needs? Will they be listened to? Will they be validated? Can they say something and it be okay and it be validated? Or are they told, dramatic. What's that?
I said dramatic.
Stop being dramatic. Oh, that sort of sounds like you might have had some.
I don't know. Sometimes I think that your husband thinks I'm dramatic. And I definitely think the boys think that I'm dramatic.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I know the boys think I am. Words are hard. Anyways,
they
continue.
Are. I would, okay, in the sense of using the words dramatic, I think maybe this is part of the stereotype.
I have very bold opinions, and I'm very outspoken about them.
Yes. And I think when big feelings come up, we can feel flustered or overwhelmed. And in your family, of course, you're going to dysregulate a little bit, but you regulate yourself pretty quickly. Like, some of this is sort of normal, but then maybe this is part of the issue because, and even as I talk about, a lot of times teenage girls have more moments of drama. And I don't mean it not in a bad sense at all. It's they're learning how to deal with big emotions. There's lots of things going on, and it's not dramatic in the sense of unnecessary. It's a big feeling that they're learning to navigate right now. And so you get this burst of emotion. And I don't know that your brothers know what to do with it. Like, do we step back? What do we do? Oh, because this makes me okay. You've seen these because they're sort of funny, but there's a little bit of truth to them. The on YouTube, the Katie Kaboom animatics. Sorry, I use some of them sometimes in my trainings. They're sort of funny, but basically, when little Katie gets upset about something, like she's told no or set a limit, is blowing up with some big emotions, right? And then little Katie goes kaboom, and then everything's fine.
Anyways, can we get back to this?
Yes, but I think this is important about voice because why do we tell girls, you're too emotional, you're too dramatic? Why can't we just say, wow, those are some big feelings right now, or you're really upset about this?
Lots of different reasons, historical, generational, and then just feelings are hard. Yeah. They're uncomfortable.
They're uncomfortable to have or uncomfortable to witness?
Witness. That's where, yeah.
And so do you think part of dismissing others or wanting it to just sort of go away is because that's a little too much for me to deal with right now? You're interrupting my TV show or whatever else. Like, I don't want to have to drop everything I'm dealing with. Probably.
Back to the system we were talking about.
Yes. Well, figured we were going to go through this.
I don't know how any of this is relating to each other. I'm so lost right now. So I need you to get back on track.
So as we're looking at the different systems in which we're learning, right? So we think about how do we develop our voice and how or push it down, or stay silent, I think depends on some of our experiences in these different systems. So we have our family. Then when we're outside of our family and kids go to school or we go to work, how are our voices encouraged and heard? Or how are they dismissed or judged or silenced? Did you have any experiences when you think about your school? I mean, you mentioned how your brothers.
I don't know. I don't remember a whole lot of school.
You're still in the midst of school. I don't think you've had enough time to
looking back is not my priority right now. I'm just surviving in the moment.
You're just surviving. So I think how this can show up is that when you're having discussions in the classroom, can the students speak up, and are all the different points heard in ways that are validated, or are some of them seen as material for ridicule or disbelief? Would be what I would wonder. And I think it's all these small things, right? When we look at like sometimes even like, okay, let's take maybe a somewhat common scenario is if something happens at school and the teacher calls and, lets the parents know, hey, little Johnny, your daughter was upset today, feeling that so-and-so was picking on her. Really, I didn't see it, didn't really see anything, but just wanted to let you know, right there, that could be true. I'm wondering, did we hear what was happening? Did we take the time to listen, knowing that the teachers are so, so busy? And then as parents, what do we do? Like, hey, tell me what happened at school today. What was your experience like? Or do we sometimes say, oh, it sounds like it wasn't that bad? And I'm not saying I have the right answers for any of this, because sometimes as parents, we have to let people know, we have to let our kids know, like, okay, sounds like you figured out a plan. And I think it's always that tricky balance of how to listen and reinforce and validate versus how to keep them moving. And so I'm saying finding a voice can be very difficult.
I'm going to try and pull this back to women's voices in something way. It sounds like what you're saying is that finding our voice starts from a very young age.
Yes.
And all of these different factors of finding our voice impact how we use our voice in adulthood.
Yes, that's exactly it. Thank you for summarizing that very succinctly.
You were all over the place, and it sounds like we were talking about parenting and children.
But I mean, but that's it.
That's part of it, but that's not the topic today.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways.
So then we're in schools, then we're hearing. And so I'm wondering, all right, so we'll fast forward to today's time and voices. I wonder what these young women, and let's, the young kids, young girls specifically, who are looking and seeing what's happening on social media about all the things that are being discussed and whether women are being heard.
I think some women are.
Some women are being heard?
Because it aligns with their opinions.
Because it aligns. So you think then that brings up an interesting point that we will listen to voices that are saying what we want to hear?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's just life. You want to hear what you want to hear. No one ever wants to hear that their opinion's wrong or that what they believe isn't what others believe. Like, they don't want to hear that they aren't thinking in the correct way or whatever, Right. Like, those aren't the right words, but...
No, I think you're articulating it very well, especially since I'm sort of up in my head and there's lots of different thoughts and actually words that are just swirling around in my head. Yeah. So.
Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to... I think this is going to be controversial. I think that there's such a divide with opinions right now because nobody wants to be wrong and everybody wants to be right and wants to be heard. But there's... I don't know,
Yes. And maybe we'll just have to stop tiptoeing and let people chime in on some of this. So I'm going to my role in mental health and certainly working with sexual assault survivors for, I don't know, over 3 decades. And that is a lot of my lens with that. And I sit there, and as I watch a woman in power who is being asked a question that's about sexual assault survivors, and to address that, instead deflect that our, and this is, I'm not an economist, what is it, that our Dow hit 50,000. Right? So I'm not going to answer your question about these sexual assault survivors because that doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
The money matters. We're doing well financially. And it's these kinds of messages that I think women hear, like, shut up because the money's doing fine. Or money matters more than my experience. Mm-hmm. And again, whatever side this is on, I don't think anybody really knows enough. Although there does seem to be enough women in this situation, and pictures and evidence. Why can't we believe them? Why are they being dismissed?
Because it's always the women's fault. I mean, you hear, what was she wearing?
Yeah.
What was she doing?
Oh, but she was smiling in the pictures. This couldn't have been bad.
We're really getting... I didn't think we were going this deep today, but okay. Here we are.
I know. But I mean, I think this is what people are struggling with some of this, which is... And I think this is just a really big example, a current example with many, right? There's also, and again, there's a little bit that I am aware of, but voter rights and some of the different ways that they might be looking at what's needed to vote, which might impact women, might not. We'll see how this all pans out. But that's another one of those things. Healthcare, we know that women, especially your age, this is very different than males. Oftentimes you have to go to multiple appointments to get the accurate diagnosis and treatment that's needed. So I think we see this a lot in lots of different ways, that it's like, we're not listening to you. Whereas if a guy said it, I don't know.
And I think it's important to point out that it's not just men saying we're not listening to you. It's other women.
And and you're right, because the example I used was of.
And I'm just thinking healthcare. There's a lot of women in healthcare, and yet
they're
people
not.
Are still dismissed.
Yes. And so then the question then becomes, because I know in healthcare, one of the challenges is many of the studies that we have the information on for treatment have been done with men. And I don't know whether, I would be curious whether that's changed in the last 10 to 20 years and whether our participants include as many females. But I think, what is going on with this? That we're not, even as other women, we're not hearing or validating, and why.
I think it's interesting that you point out that most studies were done with men, because symptoms appear different in men than they do women.
They do.
Like when you think heart attack, it's down the left arm for men, but it's not for women. Mm-hmm. And that's a known fact.
Mm-hmm. And that matters in those critical moments with that. Mm-hmm. And so we see this especially with heart attacks and other types of symptomology, and what that can mean. So I wonder, like I said, as somebody your age who's seeing all of this happen, as these, I know they shouldn't be on social media, but these 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds, and maybe they don't understand all of this stuff. And that's what I hear too, is a lot of times you don't understand some of these things, but as you get older, with the more experiences that you have, you start to see some of the dots connected with that. And so I feel like in a lot of ways that I haven't had some of the experiences that maybe some others have had, where they haven't been heard or listened, because whether it's my own support or the networks, or feeling okay speaking up in different situations, I feel like many times,
but I think
I've
that's
not had
also
that
privilege.
I think they're definitely.
You have a good career. You have some amount of, the word, it's there, reputation.
It could be, but I don't think it's always been there.
No,
right?
Obviously not. But do you feel like you can speak up more now that you do have that than when you were younger?
Yes, definitely. I think times were different when I was younger too.
That's also true.
Yeah, back in the dinosaur ages.
Back in the day.
No, but I mean, if you think about when growing up, I mean, especially looking at domestic violence and some of those, I mean,
it wasn't talked about.
It wasn't talked about, and it wasn't, it was still part of well,
that's just life.
That's just life, and that wasn't seen as being an issue, and so forth.
Do you think that belief is what's impacting how women's rights are now? Do you think that the older generations, like your generation and the ones before that, are the ones who are being well, it's the women's fault?
I don't know.
Because that was their belief. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't a thing.
I don't know that we would assign fault. What I think, and I can be completely wrong, so this isn't something I delve into often, so this is sort of off the cuff. I believe that women's rights and women's voice and vote and all of the things that come with it, I think it's still fragile. Right? So that all that had to be done to get to this point, I wonder if people like me and my generation, and I don't know, this is something I'd have to reflect on and hear some additional viewpoints. Did I start to take some of this as this is just life and it's good now, right? Like we have these rights, we're there, and we're not going and things aren't going to go backwards. We're looking at some of these things and I think that there's always been moments where we're getting closer to living in the society that we would want, where when you think about power and privilege and when I say power and privilege, I'm also thinking in terms of the other end, which is safety, right? Safety and some ability to feel somewhat equal in these types of things. And so that's one of the things with women specifically that is a big challenge, which is that feeling of safety. And this is why power, when we look at all the interpersonal violence types of issues, it's an issue of power and asserting power over somebody who has less ability, less strength, less whatever it is. And that there's so much pain in those. So I think going back to what you're saying, I'm like, I feel like in many times as I've looked past over the years, it's always felt like it was always there, right? Like, especially, and we're just diving into it all. So I'll just, like, rape culture is very real across the world. This isn't country specific. Like, rape culture is real. I think most of us, when we're raising our young girls, and this is something I use in my classes too, right? Which is this, what's different about raising sons and daughters and this and that, and how do we know we're still in a culture where this exists, is because I don't have to have the conversation as much with my sons as I had to have with you. And the fact that your brothers were oblivious, because I had to have this conversation because your brother was very worried when you went to college and what might happen. And I'm like, don't you think I've been having these discussions with her since she was, and he's like, what? Real? I'm like, these are the conversations that we have to have, right? Like the just something as simple as women, where, you don't walk after dark by yourself. And if you by chance have to, these are some things that you do to keep yourself safe. Like, that's basic safety planning that we have to have in those conversations that, yeah, I have them to some degree, but it's more of a general keep yourself safe. And so I think for me, and again, this is just thinking in the moment, which sometimes doesn't bode well for me and I get myself into trouble. But through the decades that I've been alive and have witnessed some of this, it's always been there, but there always seems like we're progressing as a society where we're tolerating it less. And we're saying, no, that is a problem and there will be consequences for it. The Me Too movement was huge. That moved some things in some ways. And that really sent a message that, yes, people in power and privilege were not tolerating this. Mm-hmm. And we saw a lot of things happen during that. And so I think where we're at now, we're making history again with what's happening now. People are watching. And we're seeing other countries that are saying, no, this is not okay. Mm-hmm. And those people in power and privilege who are part of this massive underworld, which is scary as all get out. This didn't just happen over the last few years. which brings up another point. All right, y'all, I'm just all out here. And this is what I've always told my students about women's rights. Women's rights are inextricably intertwined with children's rights.
Mm-hmm.
And when women have voice, have votes, have some of these other things, children are more protected.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that this, whatever is happening with these.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, I think it's well known that Gen Z is a very outspoken, progressive
Yes.
generation. Do you think that the older generations are making these moves to suppress that, to regain control? Does that make sense?
It does. I think, y'all, I am not politics. I am not savvy in any of this. I will not claim to be.
We're just here for the mental health.
We're here for the mental health and the relationships and how this impacts people. I absolutely believe in voting. I feel like that is the one way that I can have a say in some things. Personally, I'll share my beliefs, which is I believe we deserve better. Absolutely, than what we're given. I think the choices we're giving in any part, whatever. I think, in my opinion, there's a lot of the current politicians that I'm seeing, which again, that's not all of them. So this could be.
Yeah, it's from both sides.
And it's both sides. This is not, but I think they're very out of touch with the average American experience, with what it would be like to try to survive on minimum wage when you're trying, right? Like, I think, here's my view on politics too. I think they are pitting us against each other. And instead, I think we agree on a whole lot more than what the couple of issues, find the couple of issues that we're all going to disagree on and have beliefs and use those. But I think bottom line is most of us, we agree on a lot more. So that's my stance. And I want better options on both sides. I want it to be a hard decision and not who's the least possible damaging at this point? Because sometimes I feel like but anyway. So I think there is a lot of maneuvering right now to try to think of how to win on election day and what it's going to take to win and whose votes. So trying to get the votes, but how to work the votes. I don't know.
It's a popularity contest. They're just looking to win, and yet what's that doing for us?
Well, but and they're putting a candidate out there, but remember these are machines. Mm-hmm. And this is why I think they're out of touch with the average American, which is I do think money has come into play way too much in politics. I think that, yes, I think a lot of things are very driven by finances and who has it and who's advocating for which things and so forth. And because of that, tying it back to our thing, right, you're talking really big system thing. And are we as people in our country, and this is not gender specific, are we losing our voice in that vote? Which is a way bigger thing than that. But yet, tying it back to women, women historically have always advocated for social, moral kinds of implications, and And so that's where I think when we look, right, because I want to advocate for how people are, right? Like I love me some money. I like vacations. I like being bougie and I like that. But at the end of the day,
You like your voice.
well, and I want to know you're okay. I want to know my neighbors are okay. How you doing? Right? Like, and so that to me is what I'm going to give voice to is how we're holding other people, how we're taking care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's women's voices traditionally is and again, not that men have not done that too, because there's been plenty of men who have advocated for treating others well and so forth. But historically, women have been very focused on that. So Gen Z, I have said, I think sometimes we sort of get discouraged about younger generations and what they're looking like. I'm very optimistic with Gen Z. I think they have, what I've seen, a good head on their shoulders, really committed to causes. And okay, this one I haven't figured out yet. Like I feel like they have a better life balance views of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But dang, sometimes I wish that let's get committed to some work, right? Like, where's the purpose? I know, right? And I don't mean you specifically, but I've seen that in general. Like, they don't really get why you have to work these hours or even a 35 or 40 hour week if it doesn't quite fit in with them balancing their life. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
If I get the work done, why do I gotta be here?
I'm not talking about you.
I know.
There's a part of me, I'm sitting back going, it's a little odd, like AWED, like
awe.
In awe.
Yes.
Of like, I think there's a somewhat healthy way of looking at that because, right, Gen X, like we're nose to the grind. We work, like that's an ethic. Like it's all about making things and so it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and to see how you as a generation, how your voice comes to being. I think you all have demanded more in the sense of looking at equity and inclusion, which is so refreshing to me. And so I think that's where I've been more hopeful in your generation. But y'all are still finding your voice. And I think it'll be interesting to see which voices get amplified, who are going to be some of your primary speakers in these different things. Like, how do you show up? How will you guys show up and use your voices in these big moments that I think that we're probably, I think sometimes in history, you're living some big moments, but you don't know quite how it's going to unfold and what's going to come at the end of that. And yeah, it's a good question.
Can we get back to like more women?
Yes.
Voices focus?
Yes.
Less political?
Sorry.
Not that that's an issue. It's not the topic.
I know. And I think.
But everything's so intertwined.
It is. Because, and again, that's where when we were thinking about this, I was like, well, yeah, when you look at the ecological perspective, it is absolutely intertwined. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, if what comes out is we need to protect people who have money and influence, who are doing despicable things, and we have enough, assuming there's enough evidence to suggest that, right? Like,
I think the Epstein's files are evidence enough, but
there's enough there, right?
We're not going to go into that.
No, but I think that people are watching and waiting and go, with money and power, like I said, we saw with the Me Too, like, nope, money and power, we like sort of that concept of right and morals and values, that sort of, there was a no tolerance for that. Mm-hmm. to be violating that. And we saw that. And I think we're all watching this too. And I think that this absolutely has to do with women's voice. And not just in sexual assault, right? Because, that is a big one, but we also know males experience that too. And oftentimes their voice is even less because there's a lot of shame and guilt. In all of these are so interpersonal. But voice in general.
Women's rights were some of the last rights to be established.
They were.
And so they're going to be the first to go. That's
yes.
how things typically go.
Yes. Well, and it probably if you look at the rights that have been gained and then you're starting to look at which ones are sort of going back, then yes, we are starting to see some of the fragility in that. And I'm trying to think of other ways with women voices. You look even, let's look at even leadership positions. Let's talk about job opportunities and leadership positions. There oftentimes seems to be not as many women in those roles. And when you look at some of the psychology behind it is because when you're looking at certain skills in men, those are seen as assertive, leadership,
versus
desired.
Women,
they're called a bitch. And so, and again, this is the thing that's a little maddening, right? When we talk about this, and this is where, as women, we certainly have to be examining ourselves, but we do this too. We are more critical sometimes of other females than we are of males in those roles.
I think that society has expectations for women and how they're supposed to be. Women are supposed to have kids. They're supposed to tend to the house. I'm not even saying just be a stay-at-home mom. Like, they can have a job. We've gotten to that point. Women can have a job in society today, but they're still supposed to have kids. They're still supposed to take care of the house. And men, like, there's a lot of men who are like stay-at-home dads. Good for you. But societal-wise, men are supposed to go out and they're supposed to bring home the money.
So even your generation still...
We see it, even though we also see the change in it, but it's still there.
There's still that pervasive sort of stereotypical views of who the breadwinner in the home should be, even though there's probably lots of individuals your age who probably see that.
Well, I just think that when you're looking at the higher positions, that's still how people view it. They view, like, a woman cannot have that much responsibility because she has all these other responsibilities, or at least she's supposed to. Versus a man, he can have those higher responsibilities because at home he shouldn't be having all those extra responsibilities. And I'm not saying that that's everywhere or for everyone. We definitely see that changing. However, I think there's still some of that.
That's interesting that someone in your age is still seeing that, because I would imagine there's many of you who grew up in homes where that was not the case and saw parents' sort of partnership and working it out.
You're talking from experience here, because I saw that at home, but social media is still pushing out those other narratives.
Yeah. Well,
I think we get a better glimpse into everybody's life now and not just what we're seeing around us, because we have so much access through social media. And I don't know whether that's good or bad at this point.
Right. But you do get a lot more exposure to different ways people might be living and so forth. But, I think that goes back to, when you think about women in the workplace and leadership positions and so forth, and this goes back to our voice and, like, what do we say? And how much to say and when to step back. And I wonder if men have as much thinking about this as I think sometimes as women that we have to.
As a woman, I'd say no, but I'm not a man, so
Right.
I don't know.
It would be interesting to hear guys' perspective on this, whether they feel like they have to give as much thought and intention to how they say something and how they come across, because how they might be perceived in those situations.
I think if we asked your husband this, he'd be like, no. He just says whatever.
Right. He's going to say whatever. However, he's not a CEO besides of his own world.
No. He's willing to say whatever. That's just who he is.
Right. So. Yeah. And again, I wonder if we're sort of choosing this topic, one, I think because of March being Women's History and sort of seeing some things unfolding. And then, like I said, my own personal, like, how do I use my voice? How do I show up with it? What do I say? What's important to me? Because that's another thing, like, because this is something that I've really had to be thinking about is there's so much that's important to me, but I only have so much time. And then, so there's the what, and in that and the advocacy types of piece, but then there's the how.
How are you going to make that impact?
How am I going to make that impact? Because that is one of those things, and I tend to try to do that through my role as a therapist, as faculty who is teaching, graduate level counselors out there how to hold some of this. And so I think it comes through there. I just can't do social media. I can't put my thoughts or views, like I share it more for information or, hey, here's a picture of you. I don't know that anybody knows that I have sons unless they've listened to us, because they don't want pictures out there. But
to each their own.
To each their own. But I really try not to engage in any of that in social media because I don't have the time or the bandwidth. And I also think it goes back to people have already made up their mind on social media. And so
I don't like talking about politics at all, because when you talk, that doesn't mean anyone's going to listen.
Right.
You're just saying things to say things at that point, to get your point out there. And like, that's good. Get your point out there. But who's going to listen?
But I really do appreciate, and I will say this, I really do appreciate some who do that, and I try to show my support with my little loves or thank yous and stuff for being that voice. But that's not where I have chosen to use that. But maybe I need to be challenged in thinking about that. I don't know. I'm not there yet, so
I don't know. I'll keep my.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We've got so many other things I think that we're working on and advocating for.
I have no desire to engage in politics.
No, because either one of them, no.
Mm-mm.
Right? Like,
or even controversial topics. I'm just like, I don't want to add to it.
No,
whether I have positive or negative beliefs about it, I don't want to engage.
No.
So.
No. So, yeah.
I will say women's voices should be heard. That's about as controversial as I'm getting today.
and I want to hear them in all different areas, right? I want to hear their voices.
I might not agree with what you're saying, but I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Exactly. And especially if they're respectful. Like, there's very few things that I am like set in stone and I will never change my mind about. I mean, there's a couple of things. I will own my biases.
I think being able to hear and understand other people's point of views is I don't think it's a common skill for other people to have. And I think it's very enlightening.
Right. I wish it was more common. And why is it not more common?
I don't know. And
is it just because we're therapists and we listen and we empathize? I don't know.
And maybe it's not that. I think part of it might just be you only see the people who are like absolutely not your opinion's wrong, versus the people who like are understanding are less likely to be like, okay, yes, but no.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've listened to a lot of, like, especially when you're talking about sort of the different divide, in whether it's politics or on particular issues. Like, I mean, that's one of the things that aggravates me about myself sometimes is I can see multiple views. Like, those are valid points. I don't have the answer. I don't know what the right answer is out there on all these points in different things. But I do think we need to make certain that we're creating environments where people feel safe, that they feel heard, and that they feel respected, even when we disagree. And
social media is not that space.
it's not that space. And maybe we're spending too much time in social media.
Okay, it's my entire job.
It's your entire job. Well, and so how do we get out of that? And I do, again, the work that I do, the trauma work, the interpersonal violence, false accusations are so very rare. I mean, the studies have been out there. And so when people are sharing their stories, when people, especially if they're disclosing something, how do we help them get to the right people who can hear them? Even if you're not the one, because not everybody can hear things that are uncomfortable. And I think sometimes validate, you know what, I hear what you're saying. That sounds like that's an awful experience. I want to make certain you get to somebody who can really hear what's happening to you.
I think we've been all over the place with this topic. So do we want to close out on something related to women's voices?
Yes.
What you got? Without going into men's voices and political just all the things.
I wish I had some eloquent quote, but I don't. I would imagine some of the great writers like Maya Angelou and some others probably have something. So if a listener has that, share that. We've talked about this. I love people. I love hearing their experiences, their stories, their insights. And I really think as women, how we can show up for one another, how we can show up for all the people in our world. Historically, we are the nurturers. We look at the needs of our families, of our neighbors, of our communities, and we meet those needs, and how we show up in our voice for that. That's what I would love, is just women to find their voice and really look around them and be that voice for their families and communities. What you got?
Was that your takeaways?
I think that's my takeaways. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that everyone should be heard. I think everyone's voices are important. And I also think that we should just be kinder to people.
Yes.
Everyone's entitled to their opinions. Unfortunately, some of them, you might not agree with some of them. You might be thinking your opinion's wrong. Oh, well, everyone can have them. Everyone has their own beliefs. We are all human. We all deserve to be heard. Yeah.
And we all deserve to be safe. And no tolerance for any type of abuse or control or coercive tactics.
Yes. Okay.
All right. That's what we've got. So women's voices. Let's use them. All right.
Bye.